Hello everyone, my name is Chris with FileHold Document Management. This is actually a re-recording of the webinar that we did on auto-filing. It's our second part in it regarding using regular expressions within auto-filing rules. Now we're re-recording this only because we had a technical error and we wanted to make sure we got this content out there for the video. So thanks for tuning in today, and we hope that this all makes sense. Before we go into this too deeply, we just want to start talking about what is auto-filing. We're going to cover some of the steps we already did in our previous session. But auto-filing in FileHold places documents or records in the appropriate cabinet, drawer, and folder using a schema-based rule. So those can be descriptive or administrative metadata can define those locations. So instead of just putting a document always in the same place, we could also use metadata in order to help to drive those documents to the right place, and we can also create structure at the same time as we need. So for example, if you need to have a folder that's by vendor name, you could use the vendor name for the metadata to create the folder in addition to putting the document into the right place. We can offer both template or script-based rules. Script-based rules usually involve professional services because they're programmatic and are done at the server side usually in order to create that rule coming through. The template-based are the ones that we're going to be looking at today. And these are ones that anybody who's a user of FileHold, who has an administrative right, so it's people who can see that area, should be able to build these fairly easily. Now these can also be employed optionally, so we're not going to say that auto-filing must be used, but it's certainly a powerful tool for getting your document to the right place. And finally, this is the opposite of auto-tagging, which uses document location to determine metadata, as opposed to an auto-filing rule which uses the metadata to determine the document's location. So these two don't play well together, so if you're using auto-tagging, this may not be as useful for you. Now, I also just want to mention what merge tags are. Merge tags are a function that allow you to insert information into documents or take document information and insert them into the metadata. Basically, use the existing metadata for a document and push them into the right place. Now, that could be administrative metadata, things like the document creation date, who owns the document, descriptive metadata, which is what you're typically building into the system. So, vendor name, invoice numbers, any of those points that you're defining within your system, then that's a descriptive field of metadata. Or then finally, FileHold process information such as a workflow status. That can also be used as a merge tag. And I know I've covered this before, but the square brackets indicate that it's an optional text. The carets indicate that it's required text, and the pipes separate values between them. And we'll need to use at least the square brackets and the pipes to do some of our work today, plus some regular expression work, which is slightly outside of my field of expertise, but I still want to cover some of the basics for it. So with that in mind, what are regular expressions? And you got to give a big warning onto this one here that this is not radioactive or toxic. This is not a dangerous thing for you, but they do require a little bit of skill, and it can easily be a trip hazard for people when they're trying to build them through. So with that in mind, regular expressions, or regex or regexp, are sequence of characters used in programming. So if you've never seen regular expressions before, I'm not surprised. It's very niche. It's kind of getting more into the programmatic side. Then again, there may be people who are watching this who are saying, I know what regular expressions are. What do you mean? They're very simple. I'm sure they are. They work like a language, and they need to be programmed correctly to function. So the form needs to follow through, and it's very important to make sure that you have your phrasing and syntax and all your typing is right. You are doing programming language when you're using a regular expression. These fall outside of FileHold's service level agreement, and FileHold does not support or train on these functions. They're available to any organization who wishes to use them, but they are not going to be something that we can support. So if you say my regular expression isn't working over here, we're not able to assist you from our SLA. Now, if one of our team happens to have time, may be able to help out, we're always happy to take a look at it. We may be able to give a simple pointer, but for the most part, regular expressions fall well outside of our SLA, and so with that in mind, we build these as a professional service. So the big warning onto this is that I am not a regular expression programmer. I'm simply doing the most basics for this part of it. Now there's other resources for this information where you can find some of these details about regular expressions and how to make them work. I just want to make sure that I'm putting out right in front there that I am not a regular expression person. I just wanted to make sure that I can show you a little bit of what FileHold is capable of, and so you can use that as a resource for the future. All right, let's head over now into FileHold, and we're taking a look at my desktop, and we're going to step over and into our this is our administrative menu. So we're in the full administrative menu mode. We're under sysadmin over here, and we can see our list of auto-filing templates. So we're going to start off by building an auto-filing template. Before I do, I want to talk about what I'm going to be dealing with here. So let's talk through the process. I'm in SmartSoft Capture over here where I have an invoice. I want to take this invoice and I want to put it into FileHold. Now what I want to do is I want to create a folder, and I want that folder to use the initial for the organization. So I don't want to make a separate folder for Premium Springs Water Company. I want to make a folder called P. So I want to put that all my P documents into that folder. I also want to file these into a drawer that uses the year for the drawer name. So we want two levels here. The first thing we want to do is we want to build a drawer that matches the year, and then we want to build a folder that matches the first letter. Now, building the drawer, we covered this last time. We can use merge tags in this existing metadata to create that rule. So the year part of it is very simple. But in order for me to tell FileHold to just take the first letter, I'm going to need to use a regular expression. Now, I have used a resource to help build one of these functions out here, which is, for instance, regex101.com. This is a great website for testing out regular expressions, and it's actually what we used to build out this rule to make sure it would work properly. Now, if those of you who aren't familiar with our website, so let's just hop over to FileHold. You can also get a lot of this information if you come into here and you type in autofiling and do a search. You'll be able to see some of the different resources that we have over here for autofiling against your documents. And one of those resources will include a lot of detailed information about how to build these through. So I highly recommend heading over if you want to take a look at some of the samples that we have for some of the other use cases. But for now, I'm going to deal with some slightly more canned materials for this. So we're going to come back to here, and the first thing we want to build is our autofiling template. So what are the rules going to be that we're going to create? So we need to do that by coming up to Add, and we've done this before in our previous session, so there's not a lot of new content for this first part. We need to give this a name, so we're going to call this Invoices by Vendor First Letter and Year, right? So I'm giving a very simple definition what the structure is, and I want to say for incoming AP docs from Capture. So that's my source is going to be. So I want to push these documents through Capture, and I want to link this to what this process is going to be used for. Our summary is going to be empty right now because we haven't built anything, so we can skip this for the moment. Now we're going to go to library properties, and we're going to give it our sets of rules. So most importantly, I want autofiling to create the library object. I definitely want to create that structure. In order to do that, I have to choose a folder which is going to be the core properties for it. Remember that when I create a library object, I'm going to need to use at least one thing to be a template to base that off of. So in this case, I'm going to go up to my accounting, we're going to go to AP, and we're going to choose my 2022 folder because that's a fairly good template for these. All right, and then once I've completed that, we can apply, and now we've built our template. So that means whoever can see the 2022 folder will be able to see any of the new library objects that I create, and that can be a very useful tool. We can set the folder owner to the current user if we want to, so the person who adds the first document into there is also going to set to the owner for that. I'm not going to use that in this case because it's not important, and actually, quite often from an accounting point of view, I'd likely want to whoever's going to be in charge of the general areas to be able to do that. So in other words, if you're just a user adding documents in, I'm not suddenly making you the owner. I can also set the default schema to the current schema so that when we create that, it's going to push that information onto there. But again, in this case, because I'm only adding invoices to invoice folders, I don't need to use that either. So we're going to leave both of those unchecked. Our cabinet is going to be fairly static, and because I can't remember things quite often, I like to come over, you see I'm switching between the desktop application or FDA and the web client, and that allows me to come over to here, for example, and see one of my documents. I can open up the metadata panel for it and see the details, and this is often useful. So I can see, for example, our the cabinet is called accounting, so that's what we're going to use. So I'm going to come back to over here, and we're going to click Add, and now I'm going to choose what level of structure it's going to be. So we're going to choose our accounting cabinet name, and again, we can give a description for it over here, but it's certainly not required. And we're going to apply that, and we're good to go. By the way, you saw a validation error pop up. It's because I hit this Add button instead of this one. Just a misclick on my end. But whenever we do the add over here, it does a validation for it, and if the information's not there or incorrect, it gives you a warning on it. Now the drawer, I remember I said a moment ago that I wanted to make the drawer the year. Actually, that's not true. If I come back over here and look at my structure, I've got AP as my drawer name. So we're actually going to just mimic that. So we're going to use our drawer name to be AP, and we're just going to type that, and we're going to say apply. Now we're going to build, our next step is going to be a folder group, and we're going to include folder groups into this. And this is where we're going to use our first merge tag, not a regular expression, just a regular merge tag. So we do 2 square brackets to open up. Let's FileHold know that the next thing you're about to see is merge tag information. Our source for this could be System Administration Data, or SYS. In this case, we're going to use MD because it's a metadata field onto it. And then we're going to put a pipe in between that. And now we need to put in what the metadata field name is. Now I believe it's invoice date, which I can see right here. Perfect. Now we're going to just type that in. So invoice date, and then another pipe, because I don't want day, month, year. I just want the year that's going to be part of it. So I'm going to put a mask onto it of 4Ys. So just take the year out of that. So now that I've done all of those points, I can do 2 square brackets to close it off, and I can apply. We've now added in our first rule into there just using a simple merge tag, so not super complicated for that. The folder is where we're going to get much more complicated by using our regular expressions. So we're going to add into here, and now we're going to add in our folder name for this. Now the folder name again needs to be a merge tag because we need to let it know that this is going to be moving from time to time. But I don't have a value for this. So instead what I need to do is give a command, and this time the command is going to be replace, because what I'm actually going to be doing is using the search and match, which are the conditional settings from down here. The search is going to be for our metadata field, and the match will be the regular expression formula that will ask it to pull the value through. So what we want to do is we want to replace the folder name with whatever we have in the match formula down below. We start that off with a pipe, so standard sort of point in there, and then we need to give a command which is a $sign. Now again, I know that if there's someone on this call who is probably using regular expressions, you'd go, yes, that's fairly obvious. I don't know enough about this to teach it in full, so I'm just going through sort of the motions of this. I know the $sign is indicating to use the value from down below, and then we need to give a name of a group. And I'm going to use first letter. I could use almost anything into here, but first letter definitely helps me to know what's happening within it. Once I have that name, we can put another squiggle bracket into there, and then we can close off our merge tag. So we now have our folder name defined into this. For the description, use first letter of vendor name. Not required, but I find it very useful. Now we need to tell FileHold what metadata field that we're going to be using for it. That's a search function. So now we're going to use the same merge tag function we did before with a metadata field, pipe in between, and then we're going to put our field that we actually want to look at, and it's going to be vendor. Make sure I spell it right. Let's just go back over here and double check. Yep, it's called vendor. So we see that we have the right field of information onto that, and that's perfect. And now we can close that off with 2 square brackets. So we've now put our search into here, and now we need to give the actual command that we're going to be using into this. Now this is where it's a pure regular expression, so I'm literally going to type out what I understand to type out. So what I want it to do is use the first letter of the group, and the group name is required, and it's first, again, it's programming, so you need to make sure you spell it right. So first letter, which matches what's up top here, and then we need the first character, which is the caret, and then /W, and then close off the brackets. Now again, I don't know regular expressions well enough. I understand that's what I'm supposed to be using, so that's what I'm using over here. If you're a regular expression person, you could probably do a lot more mathemagic with that, but this is perfectly good for me, and now I'm going to apply it. So now we need to validate the process and make sure everything's working. If there's an error in the formula, I want to check it now. So we're going to click validate. So now it's going to validate the rule, validation completed without errors. So name accounting is always, name AP always. So we've locked those in. Folder group, name like 2022 using MD invoice date and the year. Name like T, which is the first letter, using replace the first letter when text field matches first letter W. So I've built that in correctly, so now that text field value will be taken and applied to the document. So now that we've satisfied with that, we can click add. That's going to add this rule into my templates, Validation completed without errors. The changes have been saved. I can close this. So we've now got our newest one, invoices by vendor first letter and year. So that's ideal. Now in order to use the auto-filing template, I have to apply it to a document. So I'm going to go over to my document schemas, and we're going to choose our AP invoices. This is the one I want to be working with today. We're going to go into edit the schema, jump down to auto-filing, and we're going to turn this on. And we could either make it from a template or from a script. We're going to use a template, and it happens to have landed on the first one I had on the list, but I could choose a different one if I wanted to. Notice that I can only have one auto-filing template per document. That's because we don't want to create confusion between the rules. If I'm using conditional rules in between it, then I would simply be making a more complex auto-filing rule for that schema. So if I had multiple points that it could be filed against, that needs to be expressed in the auto-filing rule. Now there's another way to apply auto-filing, and I don't want to worry about that too much at this moment. I'm going to show that to you in a second. But now that we have this, we've got our rule into place, we're going to save. So now we've saved this in, and this process is now associated with this document type. All right, we're going to go back over to the desktop application, and the reason I'm using the desktop application is I need to apply this rule, and I'm going to apply it using SmartSoft Capture. So I'm going to do this from an import of a document. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a quick refresh, because whenever I change the rules or change the settings for it, I like to do a refresh in the FDA. So I want to make sure that I'm dealing with live documents. Next thing I'm going to do is go over to my Manage Imports, and we're just going to have a quick look at my AP Invoices rule. Notice that the Watch for New Files to be Imported and Tag Them is on, so I know that when I do an export from Capture, it's going to come into FileHold. We're going to go over to our auto-filing, and we're going to see that this is off. So this is another opportunity for me to put in a different set of rules here than I might have against a schema. So maybe when a document is coming in from Capture, I want it to go to a different place than if somebody who's a super user was adding documents in, where I want them to use a different rule when they're using the inbox. Now this is nice because when I'm building in the automation, I could use a different set of rules. So for example, I could automatically send files to the auto-filing location defined in the document schema, so I can use that, or I could choose a different rule using either one of my scripts or one of my templates. But in this case, I'm going to leave this off because I want to get to this point in the automation, but not yet, because I want to do some testing first. So once we've completed this, we're going to say OK, and we've now built our rule into place, and it is watching that. So we're going to go over to our inbox. We have no documents over here, so now we're going to head down to Capture, and where we've got my sample document, which we can see is from 2012, so it's an older document, so it's perfect for my testing purposes, because I'm not going to be accidentally filing the wrong document in the wrong place. I'm just doing a testing document. So now we're going to go ahead and hit our export. Before I do that, there's one thing I always like to do when I'm in testing mode, and that's to turn off Remove Exported Documents from the Current Sessions. That's under your settings, XML export, and this here. And the reason I like that is because now when I hit the export button and it pushes that document out, when I go back into FileHold into the inbox, it means that I don't have to reload a document each time into Capture, because I'm just dealing with a template document. Who cares? I like to have that turned on normally because I like when I export the document for it to go away. So now I'm waiting for the Manage Import function to find that document and bring it over into the inbox. And that happens every 30 seconds or so. The task runs out, finds a document, and brings it across. All right, here's my document. We can see that it's been defined by its document schema, and when I open up, I can see that the metadata fields that are required for this document, we know they're required fields and they have an asterisk beside them, have been satisfied. So this document is ready to go from a schema and metadata point of view, but it's not ready to go in because it doesn't have its location. Because I've built an auto-filing rule built to this AP Invoices schema, I'm now ready to press the auto-filing button, and we're going to see what happens. So going to Accounting AP 2012P, so that's the rule that it's going to put into place. Notice over here I don't have that structure. So if I send this document, it's going to progress, complete. It was in green there because that space doesn't exist. So now if I come into my library, and let's just do a refresh, I should see I've got my 2012 folder group, and I've got my P document over here. And there's my document properly filed, along with its auto name conventions put into place, which is invoice number followed by the vendor name followed by the date. So this document has now come into the process nearly automatically. We're going to do one more test of this to make sure the auto-filing rule is working to my satisfaction. So the first thing I'm going to do is go over to my Tools, Watched Folders, go to my Managed Imports, and now from here, into our invoices, and now we're going to put on some automation onto this. So we're going to say auto filing according to the rules defined in the document schema. We're also going to ask this to, actually, let's just, you know what, I'm going to turn this on to choose the template to use this one, and then automatically send files into the library with an inbox status of ready to send. So what this means is I'm now going to bypass the inbox, no manual filing properties, and use this instead. Now I could have done this with the automatically send files using the schema, but I wanted to use this because I want to push those documents through by saying when you use this rule, use this auto filing template. Makes things smoother. And just to confirm, we have our watch for new documents to be imported and bring them in automatically. So that's perfect. So we're going to say OK to that and update our rules. Now we're going to go back over to Capture, and I want to change this so that I'm dealing with a different document. So there's two ways I can do that. One of them is I could simply change the date to 2013. Now I know that's not correct from what it's scanned, but this will create new folder structure if it's working correctly into there by creating a new folder group called 2013. I could also test to make sure this is working by changing the name. Again, these are test documents. I'm testing the process, not the accuracy of Capture here. So I don't mind making these manual changes to the document because I'm not keeping these anyway. Normally these are things I wouldn't do, but I don't care in this case. I'm also not going to be training on this point, so I'm not teaching this document. This is a dead document to me, so I don't care if I'm modifying the template by accident for this because the template doesn't matter to me. All right. Enough talking from that end. We're now going to export. So we push the document out. So we now know it's gone out to here. And now I'm effectively waiting for this process to happen. So I'm going to wait about 30 seconds and then I'm going to do a manual refresh to see if it's actually added the document into the accounting spot. Normally you wouldn't be sort of hitting live and then waiting for the document to come in. We're just doing testing processes, so I don't mind if it takes an extra moment. We can see that when I go back to my list of auto-filing templates, this is where we could you can still make adjustments over to here and then go back and refresh the page to make sure that your auto-filing is working. So you could be setting this up so that users are going to be automatically doing their auto-filing through a process like managed imports, which can drive that through there. You can also, and I'll say, if your organization has our automated document importation feature, then we can actually use an auto-filing rule with a watched folder as well. So you can bring some additional functionality to your team. All right, let's go ahead and do a refresh and see if that worked properly. There's our 2013 folder group, there's our A document, and there's our document that's been brought across. So we can see the process is working successfully. We've built an auto-filing rule for ourselves that uses a regular expression to push the information onto the document. That's going to wrap up everything for this session. Thank you very much for watching our video. Please stay tuned to our YouTube channel to see if any other content comes on here. We do a webinar every week. Half the time we're just doing an introduction to the software, so if you want to get some people used to FileHold and see what it's capable of, we invite you to come and attend those. And then we also do our webinar on our Webinar Wednesdays. We also do one every other week, so on the first and third we do the intro, and on the second and fourth Wednesday of each month we do an instructional tutorial just like this one. Please check out our website filehold.com and take a look and see if there's anything that might be interested in you and help you take FileHold to the next level. Thank you so much everyone. Have a great day. Bye bye.